A man went to a hotel room and walked up to the front desk to check in. The woman at the desk gave him his key and told him that on the way to his room, there was a door with no number that was locked and no one was allowed in there. She explained that it was a storage room and that it was out of bounds. She reminded him of this several times before allowing him upstairs. So he followed the instructions of the woman at the front desk, going straight to his room and going to bed. However, the insistence of the woman had piqued his curiosity. So the next night he walked down the hall to the door and tried the handle. Sure enough, it was locked. He bent down and looked through the wide keyhole. Cold air passed through it, chilling his eyes. What he saw was a hotel bedroom, exactly like his. And in the corner was a woman whose skin was incredibly pale. She was leaning her head against the wall, facing away from the door. He stared in confusion for a while. Was it a celebrity? The owner's daughter? He almost knocked on the door out of curiosity, but decided not to. As he was looking, the woman turned sharply and he jumped back from the door, hoping she would not suspect he had been spying on her. He crept away from the door and walked back to his room. The next day, he returned to the door and looked through the wide keyhole. This time, all he saw was redness. He couldn't make anything out besides the distinct red color, unmoving. Perhaps the inhabitants in the room knew he was spying the night before and had blocked the keyhole with something red. He felt embarrassed that he had made the woman so uncomfortable, and hoped she had not made a complaint with the woman in the front desk. At this point, he decided to consult her for more information. She sighed and said,
"Did you look through the keyhole?"
The man told her he had, and she said,
"Well, I might as well tell you the story of what happened in that room. A long time ago, a man murdered his wife in there, and we find that even now, whoever stays there gets very uncomfortable. But these people were not ordinary. They were white all over, except for their eyes, which were red."
He walked inside, a man's man, home from a hard day of labor, in no mood for sass or foolishness. Brutal discipline at the ready, silence dominating, save the ticking of the clock. According to their training, his family sat still, remained obedient, and as the pendulum moved within the tablecloth's dark, hairy body, his fingers running over the oily smooth surface, the tick-tock sound echoing throughout the cabin. He needed only a nod to impart his command. She sat at the dinner table, her back to her husband. Affection was beaten out of her long ago, and she did not dare to greet him. With fine china set properly before her, a thick layer of dust covering it, she mumbled and laughed. An early 50s game, show playing through her mind, her delusional part of a cheery contestant. Not that she would have known if it was, but the command was not for her. Nor was it for his eldest son sitting at the other end of the table, carving his arm with a dinner knife. Blood rolled to the stained tablecloth below, his eyes twitching, and his lips tightening with every stroke of the blade. His daughter, such a gorgeous young girl, the body of a woman blossoming around her 14-year-old mind, reacted with haste. She sprung up from the couch and disappeared into the kitchen. She returned with an ice-cold bottle of beer, walking past the little boy sitting in the corner, playing with his only toy, a small beanbag, over and over again, tossing it high, catching it in midair. The man said nothing as he took the beer, his daughter sitting down next to him. After quenching his thirst, he put down the bottle, turned toward his daughter, and she turned her back to him, just as he wanted. Her hair was so soft, long and light brown, smelling of lilac and femininity, and he ran his fingers through it. The ticking of the clock remained constant, but perhaps grew louder, more imposing with every turn of the interlocking mechanisms that made up its inner workings, grating on nerves, invading the deepest recesses of the mind, soothing and disturbing all at once. A toss of the beanbag high in the air, a gleeful gasp from the contestant, a deep cut into a previous scar, eyes closed tight as her mind went away, the man moving from silky smooth hair to creamy smooth skin, caressing her shoulders, kissing her neck. The little boy threw the beanbag higher into the air each time. When he plucked it from its fall, a cascading rush of noise broke the silence and the man's concentration. "Be silent, boy, or I will butcher you and feed you to them for supper." Holding his beanbag tight, the little boy bowed his head, looking away from his father. The man turned back to his daughter and put his hands down into her shirt, his fingers moving underneath the straps of her undergarments. The ticking of the clock was now more piercing, its rhythm irresistible and completely invasive. Light from oil lamps shimmered off the face of the clock, the arms unnaturally moving counterclockwise and then back again. The little boy squeezed the beanbag close to him, the contestant shaking her head in disbelief. She won! She won! The knife now buried halfway into arm meat, the man pinching nipples, while lapping her face with his tongue. The threat of violence was forgotten by the little boy. He stood up and tossed the beanbag once more into the air. Taking a step forward, he lunged to catch the beanbag. He stood still and looked at his father, gauging whether or not the man noticed him. He had not. The little boy pushed his luck. The beanbag was launched from his hand, but it was too strong, and it hurtled through the room, striking his father on the head. Ben was furious. He stood up and removed the thick whip from his pants. Petrified, the little boy did not move while the man walked toward him. The eldest son slammed the knife into the table and screamed. His father changed direction and ran to the table, a crushing backhand knocking the boy across the room. Another backhand cleared the china from the table, and it crashed to the floor, a million pieces playing in a shattering symphony. Inspired by the macabre concerto, his wife began to sing a jaunty show tune. The ticking of the clock was relentless now, deep black anger resounding throughout the house. Madness vibrated through their minds with every tick, with every talk. Fear pulled them further into the abyss. Shadows danced nearby, excited specters of the oil lamp, lights, evil, joy, exploding in celebration. The man met the little boy, blood squirting from his face at first, and then his back after he fell to the floor. Over and over he scourged his son, thick red liquid splashing him, rolling down the walls. A scream came from behind the man, and he turned to find the barrel of a shotgun pointed at his face. Tears pooled in his eldest son's eyes. The man smirked and gave the boy a chance to show some balls, but he was a castrated disappointment. After taking the shotgun from his eldest son, the man issued him a butt stuff. Several teeth bounced off the floor just before his son's head did. The little boy ran over to the couch and picked up his beanbag. The woman sang with tragic gusto, her success in opera bringing her fame and fortune. The young girl sat naked on the couch, waiting to perform her nightly duty. The man pulled the trigger, splattering his eldest son's brains all over the house. The ticking of the clock sounded like laughter now, whining and screeching, high-pitched insanity shaking the walls. The shadows moving around the clock, triumphant, jubilant. The man stepped over his dead eldest, stripping the clothes from his body, making his way to the couch. Almost imperceptible, but audible nonetheless, the cascade of the beans preceded the strike that followed square in the middle of his back. The man turned around and grabbed the beanbag from the ground. The little boy ran through the cabin, trying to get away, catching the movement from the corner of his eye. The man whirled around and threw the beanbag at his last remaining son. As the beanbag struck the little boy in the head, the beans now weighing hundreds of pounds, each one of them, blood erupted from the crushed crater in his skull. The lifeless boy's body careened into an end table, toppling it over. Unholy shadows streaked across the room as the oil lamp set upon the table fell, collided with the hardwood floor, and devoured everything nearby in a ferocious explosion. Flames raced throughout the cabin, helped along by dancing demons, yearning for the family to join them for all eternity. The man lost his appetite for young female excitement and ran to the front door. He took hold of the door handle and screamed when his flesh melted onto it. He pulled and pushed and kicked, but the door would not open. He smashed his fists into the smoldering wood, smashed them until they were nothing but a bloody pulp. The ceiling broke apart, fire falling in on him from above. A support beam fell and crushed him, his neck twisting completely around. The clock, his final sight, and the ticking of the clock was the last sound he heard before the demons welcomed him to hell. The fire was brilliant, visible from miles away. There was no point in trying to alert the fire department. It would have taken almost an hour for any response to such a desolate place. But not that he would have called for help anyway. By the time he arrived, the cabin was little more than a smoldering pile of ash. Load-bearing support beams jutted up from the ground, smoke pouring off of them like jagged cockeyed chimneys. He parked his car and got out, purposely walking on the family name placard that had wafted onto the driveway, stepping on the family name of whom he despised. Walking through the embers, he made his way to the former center of the house. A smile played across his face. He found it standing upright, not a mark on it, the pendulum swinging and the mechanisms gracefully catching, the ticking of the clock soft and inviting. He picked it up from the ground. Heat did not transfer from its body to his skin. No, instead the clock's dark cherry body felt cold to the touch, oily and smooth. He dusted the ash from it and turned it over, also dusting the bottom to reveal the engraving. A large circle of intertwined serpents, an inverted triangular star, the inlay adorned with a demonic angel on either side of the pentagram. Above the carvings, a beautifully inscribed warning, Te de ali quam alios de te suvias feri doctos. He laughed at his wit. They had been too stupid to decipher his humor. He told Harrison that he would get the last laugh. He told them all, but they didn't listen. They should learn from what happened to the others, but no. They just ridiculed him, beat him up, broke his jaw, and made a mockery of him. Well, they were the ones who were suffering now, and he was the one ridiculing them. As he walked back to the drive, he took inventory. 3 down, 1 more to go. His revenge was almost complete, and nothing would stop him. It was, after all, just a matter of time. The Beast of the Land Between the Lakes. There's a national recreation area in western Kentucky that also runs down to Tennessee called the Land Between the Lakes, or LBL for short. It is situated between the Kentucky and Barclay Lakes, consisting of more than 300 miles of shoreline, 170,000 acres of forest, and over 200 miles of walking trails. It is currently a focal point for over $600 million in tourism industry. Prior to 1959, before the Kentucky and Lake Barclay dams were constructed, and before it was officially called LBL in 1963 by President John F. Kennedy, and before TVA, Tennessee Valley Authority, the federal government used its powers of eminent domain to buy and tear down all the houses, businesses, and community buildings throughout the entire area, forcing over 700 families to give up their homes. Took over the land, and the area was called Between the Rivers. There are over 228 small family cemeteries, many forgotten about the lost, dotted through the acres of the forest as if it was once used as homes to early Kentucky settlers. Some of the earliest graves date back to the early 1700s, which include graves of white settlers, veterans from nearly every war, including the Revolutionary War, and also those of the black slaves and Chinese immigrants who worked in the iron furnaces that were in the area. There was also a very high infant mortality rate, and many of these children were buried right outside the cabins from which they were born, so that their mother could peer out the window and see the grave. There were also numerous Native American graves scattered throughout the acres, much older than even the earliest settler graves. Some discovered, others lay in secret beneath the layers of leaves and forest fern. Back between the 1950s, it always had been a very rural area to live in, with farmsteads far and few between, and with no real town to speak of except up at the north end in the Grand Rivers. It was in this town, back in the mid-1700s, that I first heard of the Beast Between the Rivers, or known as the Beast of the LBL. Some old-timers could sit on this long wooden bench outside the old IGA store that used to be the old country store for decades before the grocery conglomerate came to town. I used to hang around there on the weekends during the day and listen to the stories they each would tell. These old men, most of whom lived in the LBL before they were forced to move, had some very interesting stories to tell about the part of the country. There was talk of hauntings, Indian curses, mysterious lights over gravestones at night, old hag witches that lived deep in the woods, and more importantly, several tales of a wolf-like creature that stood on two legs that would come out of the thicket and attack their cattle and livestock, day or night. A creature that was taller than an average man by well over a foot, nearly 7 foot tall, with thick long hair covering its body and a stench that matched that of some of the freshly opened graves that were discovered now and then. This wolf man left tracks like a barefoot man, but where the toes should have been, instead were paw prints. The head was huge and wolf-like in appearance, with an extra long snout and uncanny long sharp incisors that glistened from the moonlight with saliva, along with eyes that radiated red, like one of the hottest fires in hell, they'd say. It had long arms that ended with huge hands, and long spindly fingers with long pointed dirt cake claws. At night they would hear it howl, an unnatural, guttural sound of painful, hungry agony. And at that warning, all would go out and tie up their livestock and even bring their most prized selections inside their homes with them. The legend of the beast went back at least 100 years and was passed along through time from family to family and updated as new sightings occurred. One old man said that his great-great-grandpappy told him that the creature used to be a man, a Native American that had the ability to shapeshift, a powerful shaman that had been outcast from his tribe because he used his magic for evil. The shaman had been tracked and killed while in his wolf state by a few warriors and a couple of settlers in the area. In his dying breath, he cursed them and vowed to return from the dead to haunt the forests and seek the revenge on their families and all who lived there. Another man, on the bench with a leathery, weathered face, said that he heard from his grandma that the beast was once a settler that came over from Europe back in the early 1800s with a disease that made him turn into a madman at night. The disease was eventually passed along to his children, which never went to school, but stayed hidden away from the population. Many thought the family had died off, because for years they'd never seen or heard from them, and after investigations by some brave men, they discovered the homestead vacant and abandoned in the early 1900s. The sightings of the monster were still frequent throughout the beginning of the 20th century, and the elderly group on the bench each told some unsettling encounters they or members of their own families had had with it. Each one told stories of finding livestock slaughtered, ripped to pieces, and ate upon. Cows and pigs, with their legs dismembered from the sockets. Even a few horses had met their end with savage attacks upon their bodies. A few of them described what they saw at different times when they caught glimpses of the figure by peeking out of the curtains of the windows into the night. One man said it jumped out of one of the horse stalls one evening while he was putting up some animals. It stopped in front of him, arms spread out like it was getting ready to grab him, let out a howl, and then sprang past him and into the dusky shadows of the sunset. This particular man said he wet his overalls during the episode. Another man said he'd never seen it, but would always hear its baleful wails frequently at night. Not like a regular wolf or a coyote. No, he said it was more deeper, longer, stronger sounding than what would have come out of any animal I ever heard. Another old-timer said his wife had seen it trying to get into the chicken coop, but gave up after getting tangled in the chicken wire. They all had tales of someone's hound dog getting killed, ripped apart limb from limb, someone's pig or cow or chicken getting eaten, the mysterious footprints left in the mud, and the stench it left behind wherever it appeared. And more than one had the same story of listening to it walk across their front porches at night and scratching on the doors and walls, which would leave deep gouges in the wood they would find in the morning. All of them agreed that this was not a Bigfoot or a Sasquatch. It would be only another year or two after hearing about this mysterious beast that I myself would encounter it at the home of a family member that lived in the same area. But this isn't the story I was wanting to tell you. This was just a brief introduction to the unwritten accounts of the darker side of the LBL, a prelude actually to the real story I'll begin to unfold. I just wanted to lay some groundwork so you could get the big picture and form some of your own opinions and theories. Walk with me now as I take you back along 22 years, back to the early 1980s, where I used to work midnights at a gas station a few miles from the Kentucky Dam, which was a few miles from the beginning of the LBL in Grand River. And it was one of these midnight shifts I had two visitors that would change my outlook on the subject of werewolves and make me believe in what I had seen myself a few years back in the same area, but had kept it between myself and two other family members that were with me at the time. But that's another story to be written. This story was never in the paper, on the news, or had any media attention at all. It was just kept hush-hush, and a sacred silence was demanded on all those involved. It couldn't get out, ever. It was a few weeks before the beginning of a tourist season, and tourists were what the locals survived on. They were the bread and butter. A story like this would be like screaming sharks at Daytona Beach, or child molester at Disneyland. The people would stop coming out of fear. I wasn't a witness to the fact, just a third person, making observations and having conversations with two individuals who were part of the incident, who were involved in the whole ordeal. They had just come from the crime scene down in the middle of the LBL after being there for over 8 hours. It was around 3 in the morning, and they were taking a much-needed reality break. 2 officers of the law, 2 grown men, who both appeared shaken beyond description. A mixture of fear and confusion, shock and disbelief emanated from them both. One was paler than the other, a deathly pallor over his skin, and it was this one, I'll name him Officer Adam, to protect their identities, that had to sit on the curb of the gas pumps, head between legs, and expel the last bit of his stomach contents. The other officer, I'll name him Officer Bill, came in for some coffee for himself and a cup of water for his partner, then rejoined Adam outside. There were no other customers, so I went outside with them to see if I could offer some assistance with the ill man. He gladly took the few Rolaids I had extended in my hand. With his own shaky fingers, he struggled to get them into his mouth. For quite a long while, the only thing that was heard were the crickets in the nearby field, the sounds of bugs hitting the fluorescent lights above us hanging from the gas station canopy, and the distant sound of highway traffic that was far and few between, as it was in the wee hours of the morning. My mind was buzzing with various scenarios of the cause of their distress. A tragic car accident, possibly a motorcycle wreck, a boating mishap with drowned victims, a murder, a dead body discovered. Curiosity killed the cat, but satisfaction brought it back. That's why the cat has 9 lives. I don't remember sitting down after about 15 minutes of this hushed stillness. I found myself beside them both on the curb, staring out at the darkness of the nearby corn pastures, letting my mind paint pictures of imaginary traumas. Adam spoke first, breaking the silence of obscurity. I can't believe it. It's not possible. I just can't believe it. In a hushed agreement that was almost inaudible. Bill replied, I know. It is so unbelievable. I've never seen anything like this before. A long pause, a deep breath, and he continued, "Or even heard of anything like this before." I looked at Bill and then at Adam. They were both gazing open-eyed, unblinkingly, out at the inky color of the night. Adam's bottom lip was trembling slightly, and it wasn't from the slight chill in the late spring air. Something, or something, had filled them each with a congested fear. After a few more moments of silent reserve, my patient was rewarded with some slow, fragmented descriptions of their past 8 hours. Bill turned his wide, azure blue eyes towards me. They were glazed and bloodshot, tired, frightened eyes. With a weary, shaken voice, he began to unfold a tale that would forever be embedded within my spirit, like a nasty shadow that lingers around a corner waiting to pounce, to awaken your inner fears once again. Why he decided to tell me, of all people, was beyond my comprehension. Maybe it was an avenue he felt safe to travel upon, to get it off his chest, off his mind. They were both frequent customers, and we knew each other on first-name basis. But to divulge such a torrid account of great magnitude, well, I can only say that the fear inside them both at that moment in time had to be released, eased, and extracted from their souls, or else they might have gone mad with unbalanced thoughts. Without interrupting, I sat entranced, listening to every word, absorbing them like an opiate, a spellbinding narcotic that hypnotized me into forgetting the world even existed for the next half hour or so. They had gotten a call to help with an investigation at one of the many rural campgrounds down in the LBL. The tourist season was about to start in a few weeks, so as usual there were some early arrivals that had come to claim prime camping spots before the areas were run over with tents. Campers and travel trailers. The sun was setting low in the sky, and they arrived at the scene. Several other official vehicles were already there, and there were many more to come, as they would soon find out. Many coming from other counties, and a few coming all the way from another state. Several of these to come were coroners from different counties. One coroner vehicle was already present, as well as an ambulance, which would prove useless, as there was no one to save. The victims were all dead, quite dead, completely, totally, and thoroughly deceased. A young married couple that had come down to take it easy for a few days were the first to discover the ghastly scene. Neither one of them wanted to stay behind while the other went for help, so they both nervously traveled to the nearest town, Grand Rivers, and called the authorities. They did not return to the LBL. They merely gave the arriving officer directions to the area of the discovery and rented a local hotel room. With the sun going down, it got dark pretty fast, so there was a flurry of floodlights from the cruisers being pointed in all directions, along with the excited movements of $50 flashlights being held by nervous, restless hands, searching the trees, the ground, the leaves, the shadows. There was a parked motorhome at the site, its frame being lit by a campfire close by, a fire that had almost went out on its own, but had been rekindled by the new crowd of men in uniform, so that they could have more light. The front and back doors to the home were open, one of the doors hanging by one hinge in a crooked slant. Through the windows, they could see zigzag movements of luminosity as the beams from flashlights searched the interior. Bloody handprints slid down the thin metal walls, close to the front door, and more bloody hand painting could be seen along the length towards the back door, their images dancing eerily in the firelight like some ancient tribal symbols. Adam and Bill did not even want to imagine what was inside the motorhome, but then again, they would soon find out that it wasn't what was inside, but what was outside that would change their lives forever. There was already crime scene tape placed in numerous scattered parts of the area, and little white flags on metal stakes stuck into the ground marking evidence of ripped clothing, bodies and body parts, separated limbs, a pile of bowels, pieces of loose flesh clinging to muscle tissue. What used to be 3 bodies that just hours before had been a happy family on a happy vacation to create happy memories for years to come, a father, a mother, and a young son. The happiness was gone, destroyed by a psychotic madman, or was it men? A murderous rage had taken place, one so abhorrently appalling that there were few witnesses to the scene that had kept their composure or held their recently eaten dinners down. At first sight, the victims appeared to be butchered by some unnameable weapon, possibly an axe or a chainsaw. Upon further inspection, by the first arriving coroner, the wounds on the bodies were determined not to have been caused by a sharp instrument, but rather by some piercing, well-defined claws, and other wounds by some keen, mordantly long incisors. Wildcat, bear, wolves. The coroner shook his head in a baffled disagreement with each guess from the officers. The claw marks, for instance, on the back of the father's corpse were distinctively made by 4 long claws with a smaller digit, like a thumb, on the side. Its span was wider than a man's print, wider and different than a bear's mark, with deep, deliberate gouges in the flesh, rake marks from an angry, unknown source trying to grab its prey that was no doubt trying to escape. The wildcat and the wolf's theory was dismissed as the open wound marks were apparently made by a more grandiose animal source. The bite marks were much larger than any mountain lion, wolf, or coyote. Whatever did it had a longer snout and more sizable teeth. There was also indications in the larger areas of the cadavers of bite marks where the flesh, meat, and bone had been yanked away from the body, like a human who bites into an apple and leaves the impressions of his bite and teeth marks. So were the open wounds on these individuals. Bears, well, they aren't native to the area, but who knows, maybe a grizzly did sneak in some way, but that was far-fetched. He would have had to travel several states and cross several rivers to even get close to that part of Kentucky. Everyone present was betting on the bear hypothesis anyway, and no one even thought of anything else to be the cause of such a savage attack. A bear, it had to be a bear. From the back door of the motorhome, an officer stepped down slowly, holding in his hands some type of garment, a dress, a small dress, that would have fit a small girl of around 5 years old. He informed the onlookers that there were more little girls' clothing packed inside the coach. This meant there was a missing person, or an absent body, a member of the family. They all prayed she was still alive somehow, hiding somewhere. A new search began. As time went by, additional law enforcement employees arrived, as well as a few volunteer rescue squad members. Groups were spread out and assigned areas to examine and explore. Another coroner arrived to assist in the identification and causes of death, and much later, a third one showed up, this one from a nearby state. All types of samples were placed in plastic bags, marked as evidence, and carefully stowed away. As they were packaged up, what appeared to be one of the father's arms, one of the doctors noticed something wrapped between the dead fingers. Some tweezers slowly untangled a clump of long gray and brown hairs. This too was placed in a bag, marked and put away to be analyzed at a lab later. From somewhere in the nearby woods, about 50 yards from the campfire, a scream was heard, a man's shriek that turned into a long wail and then to whimpering. As others arrived, they could see by the gleam of several flashlights that the cop was holding his hat in one hand and his light in the other. There was blood on his face, the front of his shirt, and on the brim of his hat. More blood could be seen dripping on him. It was coming from above. High in the trees, the flashlight swung, searching for the source of the mysterious bleeding. A very small hand could be seen dangling down from a tree limb, way up high, as well as a slender, lifeless leg that still had a white sock still on the foot. The missing child had been located. It had been Adam that the blood had trickled upon, hitting his hat first, making him look up, and then feeling the thick, cold fluid sprinkling his face, then sliding down to his neatly buttoned shirt. It had been Adam that had screamed. The little girl had apparently been carried up the tree and leisurely eaten upon while carefully laid across a large tree branch. More of the same long gray and brown hair was found sticking in the bark of the tree near her body. After about 7 hours, most of the officers were sent away as a new team of investigators arrived. They were told not to talk to anyone of the incident, especially not the media. I'm sure that besides Adam and Bill, there were others who had to confess what they saw that night, if in fact this whole event ever really happened. Witnesses that had to divulge the awful secret of that atrocious discovery at one of the campgrounds at LBL. About a month after sitting outside with Adam and Bill that night, they stopped in again during one of my midnight shifts. They were both rather quiet, more serious in nature, not like before the incident, where they would kid around while drinking their sodas and eating a snack or two. They both aged in some odd way. Streaks of gray that had not been there before highlighted both of their heads of hair. Their faces had lines of worry and showed signs of stress. I would see them again many times afterwards, but on this particular evening, they informed me they got word about some of the lab tests that were taking that dreadful night. The tests on the saliva taken from the bite marks and from the hair found on the man's fingers and in the tree bark came back with an unknown species origin. The closest animal that could be compared to was that of a Canis lupus, a wolf. Whether Adam and Bill had played an elaborate hoax on me, I'll never really know for sure, but their sincerity and fear painted a picture of truth in their eyes and actions. There are several more stories that I have heard about this werewolf over in LBL that have been told to me over the years. After this particular incident, there were several groups of Boy Scouts that had seen it. Several more campers, fishermen and boaters that had been in from the safety of their own boats. floating in some of the many bays that touched upon the shoreline. Hikers and bikers have heard its howling and have seen something stalking them while they were on rural trails, hiding amongst the trees and foliage. Hunters have run across deer carcasses that have been brutally torn apart. There was even a pair of curious gravestone rubbers, those that go out in search of century-old tombstones, then make rubbings by placing paper against the coarse stones and using a piece of charcoal to rub against it, thus capturing the images and dates from the stones onto paper, similar to when, as a child, you used to make a pencil and rub across a piece of paper on a penny or other coin to see the image of Lincoln or Jefferson, that had a fearful encounter with it at one of the old cemeteries. It had actually come up to the car as they were leaving and shook the back end of the vehicle up and down and left terrible scratch marks in the trunk lid as it tried to hold on to the little Toyota while the tires were spinning in the wet grass to get away. These two individuals did not stop driving until they were about 40 miles away. Only then did they dare to investigate the damage done. I myself have seen those scratches, much too wide for any man to have made them. They looked like heavy metal garden rake tracks, but you'll never read about it in the papers, or hear about it on the news, or get a confession from any law enforcement official or man of office. The media will say it's a bunch of hoo-ha, or just pranks, silly stories, urban legends, lies, tall tales and such. This is tourism country, and that means millions of dollars to the area. So you can't scare off business, can you? But as San says on her website, you can't tell me there's no such thing, because I have my own tale to tell about this creature. That story will come soon, I promise. But this one had to be told first, for it is far more scarier and full of detail than my own. And that bench, the long, sturdy, heavy oak bench that sat in front of the old country store for decades, it's still in existence. In fact, I had the grand opportunity of acquiring it several years ago when an even newer version of an IGA store was being built upon the same grounds. The previous owners remembered my fondness for sitting with the old-timers and having undying patience with their many stories, and got a hold of one of my family members to ask if we would like to have it, to keep in the family. The bench now sits in my front yard, by the driveway, where I sit to wave goodbye to all those who have come to visit for the day. I've learned to always wave goodbye, because you never know if you'll see them again. You never know what lies in store for you, or them, what lies in the shadows, waiting, watching, with hungry eyes and a drooling snout. When I was 7 years old, my 10-year-old brother, Jamie, was kidnapped, or so they say. The police claimed whoever had taken him were professional in doing so, that I had been incredibly lucky to have not been taken as well. They described the kidnapper in this way because no fingerprints were ever found on any of the furniture. My brother had never made a sound at the time, and most importantly, there was no sign of a break-in at all. None of the windows had been broken, The doors weren't busted, nothing. Several days before his disappearance, my father found a painting while rummaging around in the attic. He'd been trying to find his old bass guitar after I'd asked him if he played any instruments. Turns out, he used to play in a band with some of his friends, and he was a pretty decent player. His group was called Serrated Edge. Unfortunately, after an hour of searching, the guitar was never found, but the painting was. It had been placed against a wall and surrounded by boxes. My father had noticed the golden frame glinting as he walked around. The painting itself was magnificent. When he lowered it down, it seemed to be in good condition, despite being in the attic for so long. There was a house in the picture, a large gray house surrounded by grass. In the background, a cliff could be seen, then a sudden drop, which evened out into an ocean. It stretched on into the distance. Some birds could be seen up above, circling the house. On the back were scrawled some words in red ink that read, Gadiel e ben e hun. My mother recognized it as Welsh. We didn't know what it meant at the time. My brother and I weren't very ecstatic about having it as a new house decoration, but my father loved its simplicity. He decided to put it up in our bedroom. That night, we had dinner as usual. Spaghetti, I believe. Then my brother and I went upstairs for bed. We both shared the same room. We were slightly afraid of the dark, so our door was left ajar most days, letting some of the light seep in. After getting changed into our pajamas and joking around for a bit, we both settled down to sleep. It was around 2 a.m. when I awoke. I realized I was hot and sweaty, so I pulled myself into a sitting position. Jamie was in his own bed to my left, sleeping soundly. My throat was parched, so I figured I'd get a drink of water. I pulled myself out of the bed sheets and left the room as quietly as possible, creaking the door open. Slowly, I crept down the hall, conscious that the floorboards creaked. The last thing I wanted to do was wake everyone up. I headed into the bathroom. When I returned, I was refreshed, and I pulled myself back into bed. I had pretty much stood my head under the tap and lapped up water like a cat, cupping it in my hands and splashing my face as well. As I pulled myself back into bed, I noticed something odd about the painting on the wall. There seemed to be a black smudge to the right of the house, something I hadn't noticed earlier. Curiously, I pulled myself back to my feet and approached the painting, as I couldn't quite make it out properly in the dark. On closer inspection, I gathered that the smudge was some sort of man. It resembled a human, but was completely black. It looked like it was standing stationary, looking outwards. Its head was cocked ever so slightly to one side. I considered waking Jamie to show him the mysterious figure, but decided he'd be cranky if I did so. I'd wait until morning. I retreated to my bed. When morning arrived, the figure was gone, to my dismay. I told Jamie about the figure, but he didn't seem to believe me. For the rest of the day, I watched the painting suspiciously, believing that it may appear again at any moment. It didn't. As my brother and I were climbing back into bed that night, I'd forgotten about the figure. That is, until the same thing happened again. Just as before, I awoke in the early hours of the morning, soaked in sweat. This time, I anticipated the figure's arrival and glanced at the painting straight away. I felt a twinge of fear. The smudge was there again, but it had moved, and it had doubled in size. It had adopted a new position, right in front of the house, a few meters away from the front door. Instead of going over for a closer inspection, I forced myself to go back to sleep, hoping with every fiber of my being that I was dreaming. That night, I fell asleep, shaking in fear. The next day was uneventful. I avoided the painting for the most part, spending time in the living room downstairs watching TV. I mentioned about the dark figure to my parents that day, and of course, they didn't believe me. "You were just dreaming, Harry, that's all," they told me. This was the last day I ever spent with my brother. That night, I had awoken at a similar time again, around 2 a.m. I can't remember exactly what time. With dread and fear churning in my stomach, I reluctantly glanced at the painting. It was completely black. I remember physically shaking in terror, believing that if I made the slightest noise, I would trigger something. Slowly, I pulled myself out from under the bed sheets. I crept over to the bedroom door and then ran over to the bathroom, the floorboards creaking as I went. I locked myself inside. I figured I'd stay here until the morning, then ask my father to put the painting back in the attic the next day. There was obviously something wrong with it. I just didn't know what. What happened next will stay with me for as long as I live. After several minutes of waiting in the bathroom, I heard the floorboards creak in the hall outside. At first I thought my brother had woken up. Disturbed by my footsteps running down the hall, the creaking was approaching the bathroom and stopped just outside the door. "Jamie?" I whispered. No response. I knew someone was standing right on the other side of the door. I just couldn't figure out what they were trying to do. Did they need to use the bathroom? "Mom?" I said. To this, I heard a scratching sound on the other side of the door, as if someone was dragging their fingers across it. I backed away, terrified. After a moment, whoever it was walked away, their footsteps creaking their way towards my room. The next day, I awoke in the bathtub to the sound of banging. It was my father. He was thumping the outside of the door with his fist. "Harry? Jamie? You in there?" he snapped. I answered it slowly, stiff from lying in such an uncomfortable position. Apparently, this morning, when my parents had awoken, they'd found our room empty. My mom went downstairs to find us, and my dad looked around upstairs. "Is your brother in there with you?" he'd asked when I opened the door. I shook my head, but he didn't believe me, and he pushed past, searching the room. It was only after another half hour of searching that my parents began to panic. The police were called around. Everyone was convinced someone had broken into the house and taken him in the night. The police believed I had locked myself in the bathroom to hide from the kidnapper out of fear. They questioned me relentlessly about whether I had seen his face. I couldn't answer. There was something else. On the outside of the bathroom door, there were 3 deep gouges, diagonal, from top left to bottom right. The police believed they were caused by a knife, repeatedly dragged across the surface. They claimed that the kidnapper had been trying to get me as well, but had thankfully given in. Our house was closed off for several days, and we were provided with a hotel while the police searched for fingerprints or any signs of breaking and entering. As I said at the start, they found nothing. When we finally returned to our home, my parents were a teary mess. They moped around, slowly, answering my questions with one-word answers. I knew anything I said about the painting at this point was useless. No one ever seems to listen to children in times of need. They continued to act like this for half a year. It was a horrible time. Returning to my bedroom after everything that had happened was horrible. I remember crying when I saw my brother's empty bed. his toys that were still scattered across the floor, toys he may never be able to play with again. Before I turned to leave the room, I glanced at the painting one final time and noticed something peculiar. There was no dark figure, but there was something strange in one of the house windows. Curiously, I approached and looked closer. It was a face, a little boy, and from what I could tell, he was the spitting image of my brother. His face was contorted into one of terror, and he had tears streaming down his face. His hands were both pressed up against the glass. Several months later, the police gave up on the search. His funeral was held on April the 12th. To this date, the saddest day of my life. After that, all we could do was get on with our lives. I showed my parents the painting, but they shouted at me and stashed it back in the attic. They thought the boy had been in the painting all along, that I was simply imagining the resemblance. I'm 38 years old now and have a place of my own. When I eventually left my old home, I made sure to take the painting with me, for I am the only one who truly knows what happened to my brother. The dark shape I saw all those years ago was some kind of entity, something evil that intended to trap us both in the painting for an eternity. It succeeded with my brother, but I had locked myself in the bathroom, so had been saved. I keep the painting in the attic now, in case one day I might be able to free him. I can't lose hope, like my parents did. After researching, I found out that the words on the back of the painting, Gadiel e ben e hun, had been a warning. It translates to English as leave alone. Sometimes, in the dead of night, I'll hear a thumping sound coming from up there, footsteps roaming around in the attic. I'll always shout my brother's name in hope he may have finally been let out. I never get a response.
Annie96 is typing.
You asleep?
No. I guess you're not either.
Can't. It's the wind. Sounds like cats fighting. What's your excuse?
Studying.
That's what they call porn now.
Annie, what the fuck?
Not denying it.
I still can't believe what Johnny did today.
Me neither. That boy has issues. What the fuck? The wind's so loud. That doesn't seem normal.
No wind over here. Just rain.
Lucky you. I need my beauty sleep.
Damn right you do.
What? You mean I look... Shit. I think I heard footsteps on the gravel outside.
Get your crazy dad to check it out then.
I'm home alone. The family are on holiday, remember? I told you this.
Really? When? We should hang out.
They really sound like footsteps, but there's something odd about them. I should look out my window. My bed is so warm.
You sure you want to look out the window when you're alone? What if there's really someone out there in your garden looking up at you?
Not funny, David.
Wow, chill. I'm sure it's nothing.
Gonna check. Be right back.
If there's something strange in your neighborhood, who you gonna call?
David, there's someone in the garden.
What, really?
Yes! I can see a man's back.
What's he doing?
He's looking for something. On his hands and knees in the bushes.
He must be high. Probably looking for his drugs.
David, this is serious. What should I do?
Nothing? He'll probably go away by himself.
Oh my God. Now he's digging with his bare hands. He's ruining the garden. Shit. He's turning around.
What does he look like?
David, what the fuck? This isn't funny.
What?
How are you doing that?
What are you talking about?
I can see you in my garden. How are you riding here without touching your phone? Look up. I'm by the window. Can't you hear me banging on it?
Fuck, Andy, now you're scaring me too. I'm definitely not in your garden. That's not me.
Stop playing around. I can see your face. And you're wearing that stupid football jacket you're so proud of.
It must be someone who looks like me. Honestly, Annie, I'm at home. I wouldn't play around like that.
It has to be a friend of yours, David. Playing a sick prank. How else could he be wearing your jacket?
There are loads of jackets like that. My friends don't look anything like me. You must have me on your mind.
He's digging again. Fucking leave already.
Annie, do you have a gun in your house?
Don't be stupid, David. I couldn't shoot anyone.
You don't have to use it. Just show that you're carrying.
Doesn't that jacket have your name on the back?
Yeah, the team all got one with their names on it.
I can see your fucking name.
What?
What the hell is this, David?
Annie, that jacket is in my closet.
Fuck. He's seen me. Why is he smiling like that? He's coming.
Call the cops. Annie! Annie, pick up! I've called the cops. Told them there was a break-in at your place. They said they were on their way. They'll take about half an hour. Annie, are you there?
It's in the house. I can't talk. I have to be quiet. Lights off. I'm in a closet with a knife. Hard to type. Shaking too much.
Fuck. Hang in there, Annie. The police will be there in 20 minutes. Do you know where he is?
It. Not he. The look it had when it saw me, David. No person could look like that.
Jesus Christ. Does it know where you are?
No. I grabbed the knife when I saw it running towards the house, and I got in the closet when I heard it breaking in.
Okay, good. You'll be fine. A junkie doesn't have the brains to find someone hiding in the closet. The police will be there soon.
Oh God, it's calling out to me. It doesn't sound like you, David. Its voice is so deep. Filling the house. Filling my head.
What is it saying?
Come out, Annie. I just want to look at you. It keeps repeating that over and over. Have I gone mad, David? Is this what it feels like?
Just 10 more minutes, Annie. Keep it together. You are so strong. You will get through this.
But so slowly. Irregular steps. Why does it look like you, David? Why you?
I don't know, Annie. Please, believe me.
Can you make it stop? Please? Make it stop?
I would if I could. I promise you.
It's at the end of the hall. David, I didn't say anything to my parents when they left. I was listening to music. Is that the last time I see them?
Annie.
This has something to do with you, David. Only you can make it stop. Think fast.
I don't know, Annie. God, please.
Please.
It might be. It might be because I think about you so much. I think about you all the time.
So stop.
I don't know how.
It's scraping something on the walls. The wall's getting closer. Please, David.
I'm trying. I'm trying so hard.
It's slowing down. Try harder. Whatever you're doing, it's working. It stopped. I can't hear anything.
Really? Don't go out yet. Stay put until the police get there.
What should I tell them if he's gone?
Everything, Annie. Everything you told me.
I didn't know you felt that way about me, David.
I'm so glad it stopped.
Can you come over in the morning, David? I really need to see you.
Of course, Annie. I'll be there.
Great. Can't wait.
Annie. Annie, how do I know this is you? Annie went offline. Annie 96 went offline. Annie 96 went offline.
It's storming tonight. The wind is howling wildly. Thunder and lightning rages every second. And I'm all alone inside our two-story house. There are two entrances to our house. A front door and a back door, of course.
We also have an attic and a basement. Our house is pretty big. It has a lot of room. But fate hates us. Dad passed away a long time ago, and our first house was taken by fire. She hasn't returned yet. I hope she's okay, 'cause this storm's a killer. I feel weird tonight. I'm so worried about Mom. I hope this storm ends soon. I'm lying on the couch in the entertainment room upstairs, watching television. I pick up the phone and try calling Mom a couple of times. She won't answer. What's taking her so long? Of course, it's the storm. I turn off the TV and go down to the living room. I try to call her one more time. Her phone rings and rings and rings. No answer. It's starting to get cold. Good thing we have a remote-controlled electric fireplace. I click the button. Instant heat. I sit on the armchair and wait. The storm's getting angrier. The rain hits harder. Thunder rumbles and screams violently. Maybe I should make myself something, just to pass the time. I go to the kitchen and open the refrigerator. What's good? Should I take the remaining slice of strawberry cake or a piece of lasagna from last night's party? The lights suddenly go out. The fridge's light ceases. The electric fireplace dies. Everything goes out. There's nothing left but dark. Pitch black darkness. Darkness eats away at my house. The only light left is the occasional strike of lightning, and every time it strikes, I feel as if it hits me. It feels as if it struck me. The hair on the back of my neck rises. It gives me goosebumps. I'm frightened. I was never afraid of the dark, or lightning and thunder, or being alone, despite all of those. It happened to me once. I was a kid then. I just waited, like what I'm doing today. And you know what happened? Mom came. She came for me when I was a 9-year-old little girl. Now she'll do that again. I know she'll return. I run up the stairs, tripping a couple times. I'm never careful. Using the light of the lightning flashes outside, I make my way to my room and open the closet to take the emergency flashlight I hid there. It's getting colder. I go down to the living room again, now armed with a flashlight. She's still not here. Why? I look at the clock. Dang, it's 11 p.m. already. Should I call her again? Now I'm really worried about her. Now I'm afraid. I'm scared for her. A sudden feeling comes to me. I want to go out there and look for her. But maybe she's near. She must be walking outside. I should see her. I rush to the front door, open it, and see a dark sky looming above me. I look around. No Mom. All I see is a vast space filled with wet grass and some trees. The road is on the left. Icy wind chills my body, and the cold seeps through my bones. A loud crash explodes from the clouds. It's so strong. It momentarily lit up the place, making it seem like day for a split second. I saw something during the flash, or someone, standing between the trees. Who is it? Is it Mom? I look harder, foolishly using my flashlight as if its weak light would help me see through the vast darkness. Another bright flash of light, and the whole house comes to life. The power's back. It seemed like Christmas with all the lights on my house on. I look between the trees again, and I see it. It's not Mom. It's somebody else. And he's running towards me fast. He runs like hell. He runs like he just got out of prison. My heart begins to thump as my mind goes blank. He's getting closer. What should I do? I see a gleam in his hand, and I realize what he's holding. It was a big, deadly knife. I scream as I regain control of my body. I slam the door shut as he was inches away from the porch and quickly lock it. I don't know what to do next. He kicks the door hard. The sound reminds me of thunder. I screamed again. What should I do? He kicks again, and I scream louder. Nothing's gonna happen if I just stand here waiting to be impaled. I run down to the basement. I look around frantically for something, anything. I don't even know what I'm looking for. I hear it again. He wants to get in. He's hungry for a kill. What if I tell him I'm gonna call the police? Would that scare him? Maybe it's too late. I begin panicking. I should stick to my plan. I see the perfect weapon, a crowbar. I pick it up. Should I go back to the living room and wait for him to break the door? No, that's suicide. I'll just hide here. Besides, it's not easy to break down that door. Suddenly, he stops trying to break it. Why did he stop? Has he given up? Maybe. Wait. No! The back door! I dash back upstairs, hoping it's not too late. I hold my weapon tightly. Whatever comes, I'm ready. At least, that's what I tell myself. I run past the living room and into the kitchen. The rain keeps getting more horrible as the wind dominates my hearing. And I stop in my tracks. There he is, standing at the threshold, like I feared. He's come through the back door. He's wet, probably freezing. His tall structure makes his shadow cover the entire room. In his hand, the knife gleams. Thunder and lightning crashes, killing the power again. His long black hair obscures most of his face, but I can see the malice of his stare. He's wearing a black shirt, and I don't recognize the color of his pants through the darkness.
Hello,
He says. A smile crawls across his pale face. I scream in my mind. Get back! I shout with all my strength. I said go away! He sprints towards me, fast and deadly. I swing my crowbar, but it stops mid-swing. He caught it. Now he's gonna stab me. I let go of the crowbar and run as fast as I could away from him. He catches me and clutches my hair and pins me down. I scream in pain as he pounces on me. I'm done. I'm dead. But I can't give up. Not for my mom. I kick hard, and I was so lucky to hit his crotch. He moans and curses me. I take the opportunity to dash up the stairs and straight to my room. It was quite funny because I didn't even trip once. I close the door and lock it. What should I do now? I fall to the floor helpless. I shiver like I never have before. Lightning strikes again. I scream. I've never screamed because of lightning before. The rain's getting weaker now. I also begin to compose myself, to get myself back together. I take a deep breath and look around. I still need to protect myself. Damn. I forgot to stock up on deadly weapons in my room. Then I hear him calling me. I can hear his footsteps coming up the stairs.
come out, little baby.
He says in his creepy voice.
I'm not gonna hurt you.
I try to keep myself together. Don't scream. Be as organized as possible. I find my phone. I don't think it'll help me now. But what have I got to lose? I dial 911. It rings. My life depends on it. I hear an answer, but my phone suddenly dies. Oh, great. He's outside my room. Ugly psycho.
Come out, honey. I know you're in there.
I almost flinch.
Little girl, please let me in.
Says the big, bad maniac. Fuck you! I reply angrily. I hear his angry rampage as he tries to kick down the door. My door isn't as strong as the front door. He kicks again. I keep my mouth shut, but my brain is screaming out in terror. The lightning strikes once more. I can hear him kick again. Then I hear a different sound. Something I'm familiar with. Something that I could have been very glad to hear. But this time it makes my blood run cold. Something that I've been waiting for the whole time, but now I regret it. It's my mom. Susan, where are you? And I'm pretty sure he heard her too. No! I shout. Not my mom! Not my mom! I hear him run down the stairs. Courageously, I open the door and follow him, but he's already out of sight. I'm so frightened and so angry. Going down the stairs feels like forever. It seems endless. I reach the bottom and I see it. He sits on top of her. He's stabbing ferociously. Stab, 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 stab. My mother just lies there, motionless. Her blood pools on the floor. She's trying to scream, but the blood that gurgles from her mouth prevents her from doing so. Her eyes dart toward me. They're filled with terror, shock, and they're saying something. Run. I can't stand it. I'm so bewildered. I forget how to feel. He turns his back to me.
Your turn.
I snap back to my senses just in time to see the maniac coming towards me. I run to the kitchen and turn to see how far behind me he is. He's near. He's so determined. He's unstoppable. And he's gonna get me. I run faster. I try to exit through the back door when I feel something cold cut my back. He slashed me. I grab the first thing within my reach and smash it against him. It was a frying pan. It has no effect on him. He grabs me by the neck and throws me to the floor.
Don't worry. I will kill you yet. We're gonna play first.
Oh, no. No, please. He kneels on top of me and rips my clothes off like a wild animal. I'm dead. I'm doomed. He bites my shoulder, then my ear. He takes out his member.
I'm going to rip you apart.
He shouts with zeal. He opens me up like a kid opening a Christmas present. It's hopeless. He's getting inside of me. I'm giving in. I accept my fate. But no. No. My mom wouldn't have wanted this to happen. I look around frantically. There's the knife rack. There's nothing left for me to lose. It's this or die helplessly. I look him straight in the eyes. They were green. Green, furious eyes. I bite his nose. He shouts. I bite harder until it bleeds. I manage to slip away from his grasp, taking advantage of his shock. I stand up and run for the knives. He grabs my ankle. He stabs my leg and I fall. I'm too angry to feel anything. I jump for the knives, and they fall to the floor. I grab one at random and stick it in his eye. He rolls over and lays on his back, but never lets go of my leg. I grab another knife and cut off his penis. He screams louder, like a little girl. I know he doesn't have enough strength to fight back. I sit on top of him. I stab. Stab, 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 stab. His blood paints my half-naked body. I stop. He's dead now. I think of my mom. She was my last family. I remember what he did to her. I look at his face. Where his left eye used to be, there was now only an empty socket. I feel weird. It's the creepiest feeling ever. It was fun, enjoyment, pleasure. The lightning strikes again. I take his big knife and grip it tightly. I need more. It felt so good. I stab his dead body again. Then another one. Stab. 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 Across the border. There was a couple from Texas who were planning a weekend trip across the Mexican border for a shopping spree. At the last minute, their babysitter canceled, so they had to bring along their 2-year-old son with them. They'd been across the border for an hour when the baby got free and ran around the corner. The father tried to find him, but he had disappeared. The mother found a police officer who told her to go to the gate and wait. Not really understanding the instructions, she did as she was told. About 45 minutes later, a man approached the border, carrying the boy. The mother ran to him, grateful that he had been found. When the man realized it was the boy's mother, he dropped him and ran. The police were waiting for him. The boy was dead, and in less than 45 minutes he was missing. He was cut open, all of his organs removed, and was stuffed with cocaine. The man was going to carry him across the border as if he were asleep.